Tim speaks, we're going to have a panel of elected officials and former elected officials. And if you have questions for them, we have cards out on the table out front, but if you didn't get a chance to write a question, I have extra cards here. Does anybody need one? So, okay, Mark, would you pass that back to Marla? And just pass them around. If you have a question written down, if you'll just please pass it to the person in front of you. And I'm going to call on Mark and Ron to kind of be the collector of the cards. I think the thing you're going to learn most today is going to be from those panelists. Not that Tim isn't going to be wonderful. But I hope you have good questions for them. So I had handouts out at the front. I hope you all got one. I just wanted to take a little bit of time and tell you about True Texas Project and our Liaison program. How many of you have been involved in some way with True Texas Project before? Okay, let's see hands about how many have not. Okay, see, that's about half the group. That is so exciting. And the first thing I'd like to know for those of you who have not, how did you find out about the workshop today? Anybody? Website.
Chris Salcedo mentioned you.
Well, Marla?
Chris Salcedo's morning show mentioned you.
Oh.
Wow. It was positive.
See, we have friends we don't even know about. Yes.
Someone suggested it on Facebook in our conservative Facebook page in our city.
Okay, cool. Well, that makes me excited because that means the word is getting out there, and that's what we are all about. We do lots of these kinds of trainings. This is the first time in 12 years that we've done a liaison training, but we have lots of other educational opportunities that you're going to want to take advantage of. So the first thing, for those of you who are not plugged into TCP, you're going to want to go to our website and sign up to receive all of our communications so that you will know when these things are happening. It's just www.truetexasproject.com, and there's a little button that says sign up. Okay, so what is a liaison? It's a French word. It's a noun. And if you are French, you would say liaison. Je parle français. The definition from the dictionary says connection, link, avec, meaning and with, in collaboration with, to be in close contact with. In music, it's a tie between notes of the same pitch. And in chemistry, it's a bond. I like that definition because it describes all of the things that we want from a liaison. We want collaboration, we want close contact, we want ties, and we want a bond. So that pretty well describes what we want from the liaisons. We started this program in 2010. Miss Connie Burton was one of the geniuses that thought it up along with Julie McCarty. And they started asking for volunteers to be liaisons assigned to various elected officials in Tarrant County. And I was brand new to that group at that time, and I raised my hand and said, yes, I will be a liaison to the Keller School District, which is the district where I live. So this was January of 2010. We held our first group meeting, and we had Raz Schaefer come and talk to us about being a liaison. I don't know if any of you know Raz Schaefer, but he's a political consultant, and he's great. He had wonderful advice. And the video of that is still available on the True Texas Project website if you ever want to go back and look at it. But afterwards, I contacted Julie and Connie, and I said, okay, well, now what? Are we going to meet again? Is there going to be follow-up? Do you want us to report back to you? What do you want us to do over the next few months? Are we going to get together and share ideas? And Julie said, those are all great ideas, Fran. Why don't you go do that? So here I am 12 years later and president of the group, but it all started with being a volunteer liaison to the school district. So the main job of a liaison is establishing and maintaining relationships. So as a group, a conservative group, we want to have influence with our elected officials, right? We want to be able to walk into their office and say, hey, I'm Fran with True Texas Project, and have that mean something. And it does now after 12 years. It definitely means something. But it's because mostly we have established those relationships. When I started out with the Keller ISD, I went to every single school board meeting for about 3 years. I may have missed one or two when I was visiting grandchildren out of town. But I also went to their budget workshops and their tax hearing. I go to every tax hearing and I stand up and protest their tax rate. Whatever it is, I protest it. So the benefit of that was people got to know me because I showed up. And showing up is half the battle in politics. If they didn't know my name, eventually they learned my name. And eventually they started coming to me and to shake my hand at meetings and say, thank you for coming, Fran. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate your interest. Well, then as things got busy, I kind of stopped going to school board meetings because I had so many other things, but I still went occasionally. And a couple of years ago, we helped some other people try to get some conservative people elected to the Tarrant County Appraisal District. So I got in touch with my liaisons throughout Tarrant County, and I got several people to go and talk to the various taxing entities that had not made up their minds yet about who they were going to vote for. On the appraisal district, it's the taxing entities, the schools, the cities, the counties, who elect those people. So I went to the Keller School Board, and I stood up and asked them to please support my two candidates. And every one of those school board members came to me afterwards and thanked me for doing that. And then I got a letter from the superintendent that said, thank you so much for speaking at the meeting. We did vote for these two candidates, and we appreciate your input. Now that all happened because they knew who I was and because I had put in the time over the years. So that's what being a liaison is about. It's also about holding them accountable. If you're assigned to a city or a school district and they're doing something like CRT that you don't approve of, you come back to me or Julie, and we get the word out, and we motivate people and mobilize people to make phone calls or show up at meetings or whatever it takes. So we want to be a help and a support to all of our elected officials, but we also always want to hold them accountable. In terms of reporting, the liaisons are an important link to the general membership of True Texas Project. As an individual, I cannot keep up with my school and my city and my district and my state rep and my state senator and my congressman and my two senators. I can't keep up as an individual with everything they do. But if we have someone assigned to all of those people, you all keep up with it, you report back, we let you know through our various communication devices, and then that way individuals can focus on the things that are important to them. Maybe you have an issue, maybe you're passionate about education, so you just want to focus on education. But you see how we share the load that way. So reporting back is important, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And we have good communication tools now so that we can get the word out. We need liaisons to stay focused and avoid the political Stockholm syndrome. This is something that Raz Schaefer taught me that first time in 2010. And political Stockholm syndrome means you start getting to know an elected person and he becomes your friend, and you have his cell phone on your speed dial, and you feel like you have his ear. Just remember, that means you have access. It does not mean you have power over that person. Power comes when they do the wrong thing and you step out and say, hey, you're doing the wrong thing. Getting invited to all of the fundraising dinners, or having them return your phone calls doesn't do any good at all unless you can call them out when they do the wrong thing. praise them when they do the right thing, but call them out when you do the wrong thing. So don't fall into that trap of being best friends with your elected official. It's okay to be friends with them as long as you're prepared to be honest with them and be truthful. How many of you here are already liaisons assigned somewhere? Okay, this is great. We don't have a lot, frankly. We have a lot of open positions. And now that we are growing our groups into other counties, of course, every one of those counties needs a whole new set of liaisons. So if you're interested in becoming a liaison to represent True Texas Project, you have to start with an email to me. And my email is rhodesfran@yahoo.com, and I have business cards up here you can grab before you leave today with that contact information. We are fairly careful about who we assign as liaisons and where we assign them, because you will be representing us to these elected officials, and we want to make sure that your core values align with ours and that you are capable of communicating those values and principles in a professional manner. Sometimes also, I meet someone that just really, really, really wants to be a representative to the congressman, and I might say, I think you'd do better at your school board. It's a personality thing mostly, but I try to do personal interviews as much as possible. Now with our growth and people, all over the state, that's not always possible, but I still like to try and do it. And if I can't do a personal interview face-to-face, I will do it over the phone. So after today, if you're interested in doing that, just pop me an email and we'll set up an interview. I think I just turned my mic off. No, I didn't. If you're not interested in being a liaison for True Texas Project, that's perfectly okay too. If we can inspire you today to go and do something with some level of government, then we have achieved our goals, because our mission is always to educate and motivate citizens to engage in government at every level. So if you learn things today and that gives you courage to go to your city council and speak out against something or in support of something, then we have achieved our goals. So once again, thank you everybody for coming, and we will move on to the next segment of our program, which is Mr. Tim O'Hare. Tim is on our advisory council for True Texas Project. We have a group of people that we call the big thinkers, and Tim is one of those. They're our idea people. So when we need to do new things or expand into new markets or whatever, they help us come up with ideas on how to do that. Tim is the former mayor of Farmers Branch. He is the former chairman of the Tarrant County GOP, and he is currently running for the judge of the Tarrant County Commissioners Court. He has a beautiful wife and 4 beautiful daughters, and is a member, along with me, at First Baptist Grapevine. And we're very happy to have him. He has a wealth of experience that can help us out today. So please welcome Tim O'Hare.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Fran. Fran gives so much of her time, energy, talent to helping our causes, helping our county, helping the whole state of Texas. Please give her a big round of applause. And Glenn Beck owns this. I think y'all probably know that, but he lets them use this all the time, doesn't charge anything, and let's give them a big round of applause. I'll finish up round of applauses right here, and I mean this sincerely. It's not a cheap way to get applause. The fact that this many people are sitting on Saturday morning in the middle of the summer saying, I want to get involved, I want to help, I can tell you, I am seeing, and I've been dealing in politics, and I've been a mayor and a council member and a party chairman. I have never seen this many people as I see right now around our area, around around the state standing up and saying, I'm not going to take it anymore, I'm going to do something, I'm going to help. So give yourselves a big round of applause. I was given about 30 minutes to speak here, but I will tell you that I am really, really excited about our panel. So I'm going to get through this quickly because I want you to hear from them. We've got some great folks who we're going to introduce you to in a minute. I am not here to talk about that I am running for Tarrant County Judge. I'm really not. I'm not here to talk about electtimohair.com. That is not what I'm here to talk about. If I were not doing that, I would be in this room, and I mean that. And you'll know that when I tell you a story here in a minute. So, this program that you're interested in doing, you're interested in working on, it's incredibly important. And I'll tell you that Democrats, the left, and we know this, but think of it in these terms. For them, government is everything. I mean, many of them are to the point they worship government, okay? And they never stop when it comes to government, ever. What we have done for decades is we have sat there, and we may work an election, we may help a candidate, but once that election's over, we're done. And, we go to our families, we go to our church, we go to our businesses. What do? They keep going, keep going, keep going. Right after an election happens, they're out registering for the next one. So the one thing I want to tell you and leave with you is this. And take care of your families, and serve in your church, and serve in your communities. Do all those things. Do a great job at work, with your own company, work for somebody else, whatever the case may be. But give time to helping our government and helping candidates and helping elected officials. They do it. They don't stop. We have to match it. Our ideas are better. Our ways are better. They're more successful. A rising tide lifts all boats. But they don't quit. And and I'm not speaking to you, obviously, but they want it more than we do. Okay? I'm seeing that change. And get your uncle and your cousin and your best friend and your nephew, get them to come do something like this. Get them to show up to a True Texas meeting. Get them to go sit at a school board meeting. Get them to serve on a committee in the school board or on the city council. We can turn this around. A very small group is why we have the American Revolution, is why we have America. A very small group of people can make massive change, and we'll tell you about Southlake here in just a second. So, the Liaison program. Very, very important. We're going to get some different ideas. Chris Hill may think we should do it this way, and Connie Burton may think we should do it this way, but I want you to take from this everything you get, digest it, and then use your talents and abilities, what works for you, to help affect change in every level of government in this county, in this state. You're going to learn a lot. There's some good folks up here. There's two different ways to deal with elected officials. Remember, they used to be human also. And there's two different ways to deal with them. One is bash them over the head. And one is try to befriend them, get to know them, catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. Okay? I'll tell you, far too often, we go to the head bashing. And it's regularly not very productive. There are times when you have no choice and you got to do that. And we'll get to that here in Southlake in 1 second. There are other times when catching more flies with honey than vinegar is the way to go. And I'll give you a story. When I served on the Farmers Branch City Council, before I was mayor, it was during the Obama years, and you may remember back then our economy was in the toilet. And so our city was trying to figure out ways to cut costs. And at the time, in Farmers Branch, every employee got 100% of their health insurance paid. So did the spouse, so did the kids. I think even the dog and cat got it. But it was incredible health insurance benefits. So we didn't want to raise taxes on the residents and the businesses. So one of the things we looked at was, what can we do with health insurance? So I think the deductible, the family deductible at that point, was something insane, like $150 a year. So we looked at, okay, what could we do? How much money could we save in premiums if we just went to $300 deductible or $1,000 deductible. So what happened was a group of employees organized, and they went on the attack against our city council. And I mean, they were bashing us everywhere you turn. Well, you got to remember about elected officials. They didn't get there usually because they're wimps. Okay? They didn't get there because they don't know how to fight. They didn't get there because they're afraid of their own shadow, usually. They got there because they worked hard, probably. They got there because they're probably pretty smart. And they got there because they knew how to make friends and build relationships. But they also knew how to fight. So what happened with our council is they got backed into a corner, and it went the wrong way. And so they were going to start chopping health insurance like mad. That's an example of not the way to do it. If they had come forward to our city council members and said, hey, this is the reason we came here, this is a big benefit, is there a different thing we can look at? If they came to the table and said, hey, what if we did this, would this work? It would have been a much different resolve with the city council. And this was a strong bunch of people. What ended up happening? They said, you know what? No. All our residents are cutting. We're not going to raise taxes. And so they ended up cutting it where it paid about 75% of the premium. There were ways that it could have been better health insurance or better benefits than what it ended up. But because of the way they went and just attacked and went on Facebook, and I don't even know if Facebook was around back then, as like it is now, but they went on forums and listservs and just went after them. And it didn't end up to their benefit. Okay, that's an example of the bashing that doesn't work. Now, I wouldn't call it bashing, but let me tell you about what happened in South Lake. So, how many of you have heard about the fight in the schools in South Lake? Raise your hand. Okay, well, give them a little high. There's a lot of people who haven't. Okay, so everybody knows what critical race theory is, right? Critical race theory stands for all white people are bad. Okay? And that's what they teach. And then it's also, if you're not white, you're oppressed, and you're not good enough, so we got to help you out. That's what critical race theory is in a nutshell. South Lake Carroll ISD, which is a very conservative school district, tried to institute critical race theory and a host of other things back last July of 2020, through something called the Cultural Competence Action Plan. Anybody heard that term? Okay. So a group of citizens saw that when they put it out on, I think, July the 31st of 2020. They were going to vote on it on August 3rd. So a group of citizens came forward, spoke at school board meeting, sent emails to the school board members, called them on the phone, went and had coffee with them, did everything they could to say, this is bad, this is wrong, this is not the way to go. And it was a huge number of people coming out and saying, this is not right, this is not what we want to do, you got to rethink this is bad, here's why it's bad. There was a real effort to do it in a, I would say, gentlemanly or ladylike or compassionate or decent way. The people in Carroll ISD were ignored. And it became very much a us against them, school board against the people, but the people far outnumbered the school board in terms, the people that did not want this garbage in our schools was overwhelming, but they just dug their heels in and fought and did all kinds of things that you wouldn't believe, so unbecoming of elected officials. Once we saw the direction it was going, that was the time to take the gloves off. So we formed an organization called South Lake Families. I formed that back in August of 2020. A lady named Liaison, some of y'all may have heard of her, but she's a conservative firebrand activist that lives in South Lake. Her husband used to be mayor there. She, out of her own pocket, paid, I think it was $3,000 to put up Facebook ads and Instagram ads to collect email addresses to get the word out about what was going on. Got thousands of emails from her out of her own pockets, and it was incredible to see what happened in South Lake. So who you'll meet here in a minute, Hannah Smith, One of our newly elected school board members, she stepped up and said, what can I do to help? What can we do? She organized a legal committee for us. We had people from all over South Lake stepping up and saying, we're going to fight. And we fought hard. We did over 450 open records requests to Carroll ISD. We found such incredible fraud and self-dealing and dishonesty, you'd be stunned. That was an example of, you can't do this the nice way. Okay, we tried that, didn't work, they ignored us. Just to heck with you. So we stood up and fought. And that is a time where you have to do that, and sometimes that's what you have to do. We did. From those open records requests, we found that multiple school board members had violated the Open Meetings Act. Somebody turned in text messages that were received through the open records request to the DA's office, and both the president and the vice president of the school board have been indicted for violating it. We found just unbelievable self-dealing. I'll give you one example. One of the assistant superintendents brings somebody in to speak to the teachers about white fragility, white privilege, white bias, the whole 9 yards. This person's name is Doc Brown, has an organization called Doc Brown Speaks. Doc Brown spoke to the Carroll ISD teachers and administrators for, how long was it, Hannah? An hour and a half? 90 minutes. And was paid $15,000 by this assistant superintendent for his 90-minute speech. So the same guy gives a speech somewhere else for half price. Well, then we find out that the assistant superintendent that hired him and authorized the payment also was on his paid speakers bureau. And so he gets a deal, and guess what? She goes out and gets paid to go give the same kind of speech somewhere else. And the self-dealing that we saw in this was unbelievable. Education is big business. And we exposed it. So I can tell you, fast forward, there's a whole lot of work and a whole lot of effort that went into it. Hannah stepped up to run for school board. Hannah, we worked our tails off, but nothing compares to what Hannah did. Hardest working candidate I've ever seen in my life. When the final vote was counted in the beginning of May, a month ago, Hannah had won her race, and another person that ran to stop critical race theory and clean out all the garbage in South Lake Carroll ISD won also, and they won their races 70 to 30%. We absolutely can win. We absolutely can turn it around. You can never give up. You can never stop fighting. And everybody in this room should get involved somewhere, whether it's running for office, helping somebody run for office, and recruit your friends. People in this country, if they know what's going on and they know how to do something about it, will. Because people still love this country. We even find it on their side. There's plenty of Democrats that don't like critical race theory either and are willing to fight. So there's two different ways to do it. I'm of the opinion you start with honey, not vinegar, but sometimes you got to go to vinegar, and this was one of those times. The other bit of good news about South Lake Carroll ISD during all this, and I'm shrinking down the timelines, but the superintendent that was in charge when this was all going on is no longer with Carroll ISD. The two assistant superintendents who were behind this cultural competence action plan are no longer with Carroll ISD. And another lady that ran the special services, who was a big part of all this CRT, LGBTQ, left-wing propaganda stuff they wanted to put in our schools, is no longer with CISD. We still got a little more ways to go, but a group of people came together, fought like nothing I've ever seen, and it was incredible. And we've changed the face of that whole district. And we're getting calls. Hannah's on TV every 15 minutes. We're getting calls from all over the country to go tell them, here's our blueprint, here's how we did it. So for those of you that are concerned about what's going on in your school district, and if you're not, you should be, because this kind of stuff is everywhere. We have the blueprint on how to do it. We have the blueprint on how to fight it. I'm going to give a speech about that in far more detail about what we did, how to fight it, how to be successful. We can give you the blueprint on how to do it. I'm going to give a speech at the Northeast Tarrant Republican Club here. I think it's July the 19th. So if you wanted to come out to that, we'll lay it out there for you. But we need people in every school district in this area to stand up and stop that nonsense. And how do you do it? You got to get the right people on the school board. That's what it's about. You get the right people on the school board, they'll get rid of the idiots inside the school district that are doing this kind of stuff. Okay? So that's what I have for you. We have an unbelievable panel that I think you're going to love hearing from these folks. Fran, are you going to introduce them?
Yes.
Yeah. You give these people your full attention. They have done it. They've been there. They've fought the fight. They are phenomenal individuals, and I think you really enjoy hearing from them. So thank you for letting me speak with you.
We have at least one school board liaison in the group, Mitchell Holmes. Raise your hand, Mitchell.
Ryan.
Raise your hand.
Mitchell Ryan.
You're thinking of
I'm sorry.
Larry.
You're right. Larry is what I wanted to say is Mitchell is assigned to Senator Nelson, but he's been doing some heavy lifting in the Grapevine-Colleyville district. And Larry, now raise your hand, Larry. But I want you to raise your hand too. Larry was just assigned to that school district a few months ago, and he has worked his little tail off getting at least one more conservative elected to that board. But we know, what I'm trying to say here is because of these two gentlemen, we know that it's happening in Grapevine-Colleyville. Mitchell has done a lot of work and research with FOIA requests and things like that. So he's kind of very generously offered his expertise to other people who want to do it in their district. So if you want to learn about that, contact me afterwards and I will send you what I have. Also, Heritage Action and the Center for Renewing America both have really good toolkits. Those are national groups, but they have toolkits on critical race theory that you can get off of their website. So,
Center for what? Renewing America. Renewing America. Oh, yeah. Okay.
yeah, Center for Renewing America. That's Russ Vaught's new group. Russ used to be with Heritage, and then he was in the Trump administration, I believe, and now he started up this new group, and Wade Miller works with him. Most of you know Wade Miller. Okay, moving on. Tim is right, we have an awesome panel, so I'd like to introduce each one of them and ask you to come up and take a seat. First we have Senator Connie Burton. She was former senator in District 12 and a conservative champion down in Austin, and she now is owner and publisher and just general mom of the Texan.news. So welcome, Senator Burton. And then representing cities, we have Mayor Richard Newton from the city of Colleyville. Mayor Newton has been part of the group that really turned this little city around, instituted budget limits, tax cuts, and term limits. That's what I'm trying to think. Term limits, along with some really conservative council members. So we're glad to have Mayor Newton with us. And next we have Mrs. Murphy McNutt. Murphy has spent a lot of years working with Jonathan Sigmund, who was a state rep in District 92 until this past session. Murphy has been his district director, his legislative director, and his campaign manager. So she has, yeah, if you know Jonathan, pray for Murphy. But Murphy, has been on the front lines of doing the behind-the-scenes work. So we thought she would she's not an elected official, but she's an elected official sitter. So she has lots of experience that's going to be valuable to us. And then representing counties, we have Judge Chris Hill from the Collin County Commissioners Court. Judge Hill is a taxpayer champion in 2019, when I was in Austin testifying at hearings for the SB2 property tax cap limit thingy, Judge Hill was one of the few people that came down there in support of that bill. Most of the elected county and city and school people told us all that life as we know it would end if they passed this bill and limited the revenue that the city or county could draw in. So we appreciate you for that. And then representing school boards, we have Ms. Hannah Smith. Susan's already told you about her. She was newly elected to the Carroll ISC school board after all the trauma that they went through down there. So she's going to give us a school board perspective, although she hasn't been on the school board for very long, so she hasn't had a chance yet to interact as a trustee, but as an activist, she's done the work. So thank you for coming, Hannah. That's for you. Does anyone have cards that you want to pass forward? Question cards? There's one.
So, folks, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give each person on the panel about 5 minutes to tell you what their experiences have been, how they think they can help you, or things that they can point out to you that they think would help you be better at being a liaison, or if you're not going to be a liaison, how you get involved in the community. One thing I did not say about Hannah, which I wanted to say. So, Hannah had lived in South Lake all of about a year when all this started.
Wow.
So, everybody says, oh, they can't win. You got to be here 20 years. You got to be doing this, that, and the other. Well, the little secret is Hannah was a clerk for Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court, clerk for Samuel Alito on the Supreme Court, appeared before the Supreme Court in multiple religious liberty cases, and she actually ran Samuel Alito's confirmation proceedings in the Senate when he was named to the Supreme Court. So Hannah blew her opponent out of the water. The right person can win. So we're going to give each of them the opportunity. Something else I want you to do. Write questions, think of questions. No question is off limits. So it may not be directly related to liaison. Hey, elected official, why do you do this? Or why doesn't this happen more often? We want to be a resource for you. So if you got questions, ask them, fire away. We want you to. So we'll start on this end with our great former Senator Connie Burton.
Woo! Thank you. I usually yay for myself in case somebody else doesn't. Thank y'all so much. Thank you, Fran, for having this today. Thank y'all for inviting me to do this. So I'm just going to talk from the perspective of the Senate. Most of you know, or maybe you don't, I don't know. But if you ever watch the legislative session going on, there's not much to watch in the Senate. It's a snooze fest compared to the House, right? From the Senate's perspective, legislation is passed very, very differently than it is in the House. A lot of things are done behind the scenes. In fact, the bill does not get to the floor unless it's going to pass. So once a piece of legislation gets to the floor, you can guarantee it's going to pass. Now, it may have amendments put on it during the floor debate, but that's pretty much it. So anyway, because things are done so behind the scenes, it's not secretive. The individual senators are not trying to be, most of the time. Sometimes they are trying to be secretive. It's just how the Senate functions. So first and foremost, know that. And so if you're a liaison to a senator, definitely go and have meetings with them, ask specific questions about legislation, because there's lots of things going on behind the scenes that absolutely nobody knows about, trust me, because there's there's a lot of horse trading, which I hate. I never did the horse trading part, but there's a lot of that going on. It's very tentative most of the time. So you have to sometimes, as what Tim said earlier, nothing could be closer to the truth than what Tim said. And sometimes you got to fight with vinegar, with the whatever it is. Anyway, sometimes you got to be nice. Sometimes you got to get them over the head. And don't be too quick to hit them over the head, because they could very well be working on the side of a piece of legislation that you want them to. But they can't be vocal about it because it's such a tenuous situation. There's also the freaking human element in all of this. Please, 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 everybody know this. And Tim alluded to this too. They were former people, as you said, and they get their pennies in a wad. They know what you're saying on Facebook. If they don't know what you're saying on Facebook, their staffs do. So if you're out there calling them names, saying mean things about them on Facebook, you're not going to get anything. Trust me. So don't use your social media to attack somebody personally, and think about it. Who wants that? I mean, you don't want that either, right? It's just not a good way to have rapport, regardless of how you think about how they are in legislation. And to go further with that, don't make it personal, ever. Ever. It's not about the person, although the person is the one voting. It's about the legislation. You can be kind to them, be their friend, not be their friend, but they can never begrudge what you say if it's always about the piece of legislation that they are voting on. Just like Fran said earlier, praise them, when they voted correctly on legislation, but also say, this is not our core values, this is not what you ran on, this vote is not a good vote, right? Always be focused on the piece of legislation and the vote, not the person, or you're not going to get anywhere. I will tell you again how the vinegar and sugar, whatever that is, for instance, it's so true. There was a particular piece of, I think it was amendment I put on to something, I cannot for the life of me remember it, but it had something to do with parents were bringing to me in the district, as well as the group vaccine choice. It was a really good piece of legislation, but we had to, because Texas Medical Association is a huge group down in Austin that absolutely was going to kill this absolutely individual rights piece of amendment that we were putting on. So we actually asked the group and everybody that was talking to us about it, don't say a word. We're just going to slip this amendment on, we're going to hope nobody sees it, and we're going to get it passed. This is how you have to do things sometimes. And by God, we got it passed. And it was all the parents and those people who had been fighting for it for so long could do to be quiet, but they did. They were awesome. We said, please, please, please don't say anything. And we got it passed. Now, constitutional carry. We're going to have every gun rights group in there, because that's about the only way we got it done this past session. Because, Texas is what, 23rd now to have constitutional carry. It's been long enough. We've been trying it for years. Republicans have been killing it every freaking year. It was a year for several years, right, for gun rights groups to get in there and pound people over the head. Why do we not have constitutional carry? It is a right. We must defend the rights of the citizens of Texas. And so I would call every group in there. It was done right. We got it passed. So I'm just kind of really piggybacking on what Tim said. Everything he said is true. Just remember there are strategies on legislation. Just because you don't know the strategy does not mean that somebody's secretly killing it. It may mean that somebody's secretly trying to pass it. Have a good rapport with your senator. If they ask you to, let's just be silent about this, give them that. Let the people know, perhaps in your close group, and say, they're trying to do this. We're just going to kind of keep it on the down low. Or if the senator says to you, we need help, sound the alarm. So that's my little bit there.
So Richard Newton, everybody hear me on this? Just going. So Richard Newton, Mayor of Colleyville, is next. Let me speak about Mayor Newton for just a minute. So probably the city council that you can look at in the DFW Metroplex that's the most conservative and does the most sensible things is Colleyville. And that is due in no small part to the leadership of Richard Newton. Now, Mayor Newton is not, he's not a bomb thrower.
Right.
He's not up there releasing statements every 15 minutes. He's not doing it for himself. He's not doing it so he gets a bigger name, but he's a pretty quiet leader who does it the right way. And just watching what they do in Colleyville, in fact, it reminds me of Chris Hill quite a bit, county judge in Conn County. It's not about him. It's not about making a name for themselves. It's about doing the right thing and doing it honorably. So both of these gentlemen are just the ultimate example of how to do it with class, with integrity, but standing up for the right thing. So, Mayor Newton.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Tim, and I'm very honored to be up here with all you guys. We've got a great panel here. And thank you, Fran, for doing this, and all of you for coming, and you that are liaisons, thank you so much, and those that are going to become liaisons, thank you so much. It's very critical and very important. You're going to hear a lot of the same thing probably from each one of us, but Connie made me think about a couple of things while she was talking. You know, in Austin, there's a lot behind the scenes, right?
Yes.
You said that. That's a little bit unfortunate, but I understand that's how a lot of it has to work. And in city politics and city councils, none of it should be behind the scenes. None of it. They should not be talking to one another about any issues that they're going to vote on, unless they can. You know, I can talk with 2 other council members. That's it. And I'm very, very, very careful about that. You should have work sessions where if you're talking about anything substantial that's going to end up in a vote eventually, it's got to be in the public. And so keep that in mind. You were talking about the vim and vigor. You have to be nice, and eventually you have, come out fighting a little bit. But I got to tell you, the South Lake activity that you guys did was phenomenal. It's a great, great example of how to do things. Because even though you were talking about, hey, we had to take the gloves off and come out with vim and vigor, you did it in an excellent way. If you look at the mailers that were sent out, all of them were outstanding. It didn't talk about opponents. It was all about issues. It was about the fact of what's going on, and that's what got people's attention. So I really do applaud you. That's an example I put up to everybody I talk to about how to do it. So Fran was talking about, before I forget too, you mentioned, Fran mentioned, got 2 new people on the TAD board. That's a big issue with me. Work very hard to get those people on there also. We've got 2, not a majority yet. We need more. And so I'm not going to go into all the reasons, but believe me, it is important to do that. So my key message, and Fran talked about this, is to show up. Fran talked about her showing up, and the fact that she showed up, people got to know who she was. And that's important. I sit in council meetings, and we do have a few people that show up all the time. And we know who those people are. And it's great to show up over and over and over. And just because they show up, no matter what they're doing, just because they show up, and when I say no matter what they're doing, either they're talking nice or they're talking ugly, we know who they are. And so that's very important. You have to do that to establish yourself. Hey, I'm serious about this. This is important to me. And the elected officials recognize that, and it's important to them and how they think. Now, you don't want to, there's 2 kinds of people out there. The ones that quote are nice and the ones that are unreasonable. Let me say unreasonable. And, the ones that are unreasonable, we sit up there and what's going on in our minds, we were rolling our eyeballs as we listen to them. We will listen to them. When I run meetings, I'll listen to anybody all night long. People can talk when they want to. I overdo that, and because I think that's appropriate. It's a citizens meeting, it's a citizen city, and it's citizens' money that we're spending. So, and unfortunately, many people don't do that. So what's the difference? It's important to establish that relationship and to make headway. You don't want to be one that they're rolling their eyes about because they may be listening to you, but it quickly goes away. of garbage that goes on in social media. And I really preach this to my council and any elected official. I totally ignore anything that's negative, literally, totally ignore it. Don't listen to it, don't read it. I get told about it all the time. But I say, hey, that's okay. That's okay. Ignore it. And because if we as elected officials give it any, if we react to it, we're simply giving voice to those people. And I don't want those people to have voice because they're certainly not taking the positions that I would take. Many times they're completely unreasonable positions. Many times they're completely emotional positions, have nothing to do with fact, have nothing to do with what's good for the citizens. And just as a great thing to talk about. Just be aware of that. And the people that do say good things, you hear that too, and it does make a difference. Because, you know, people take these positions and you're working your butt off all the time for nothing, and only try to do good things. And so anyway, so we were asked, hey, what are your tips for Liaison? So, one, show up. It's important to show up. Now, if you want to be heard and establish a position that will be meaningful to the elected officials, there's ways to do it. And you've heard this already. Be friendly and personable. You know, all politics is very local. It's very true at the city level. Local officials appreciate different views. I listen to any and everybody, literally. I listen to them, even if they're completely opposed to me. And I do that because I'm always looking for what's the issue out there. What am I missing? Am I missing something that I'm blind to that's important to citizens? So I need to listen. I'm obligated to listen as far as I'm concerned and try to learn that. Because if I learn something that I legitimately think is an issue, is important to citizens, I'm going to turn around, I'm going to do something about it. My approach to life in politics is don't have any issues. Don't have any issues out there a citizen should be concerned about. If you learn about it, fix it. Take care of it immediately. And by the way, we've got a council that's all super, and we've all been there since 2016, and we win elections 60-40 consistently every single time. And we've had very, very aggressive attacks against us. Doesn't work. And doesn't work because there's no issues. So they go make up stuff that's untrue. So be aware of that. And you need to be friendly and personable because you need to keep the communication lines open. If you aren't, if you're a little ugly or aggressive or whatever, you're perceived that way. What happens? This is just personal things. Defensive walls go up and they're not going to talk to you. Or they're not going to listen to you. They're not going to pay any attention to you. So you want to avoid that. How do you do this? Present clear and specific messages. I mean, you're as a liaison out there to understand what principles do we represent, communicate those principles to elected officials, and convince them to take action on those principles. And so you need to be specific and you need to be clear. You need to always have the facts that support your position. The way I make decisions is purely on principles. I have a set of principles that I act on, take positions on, and I do not deviate. I do not deviate even if I got a room full of citizens yelling at me, because I know the principles are true and proven, and we as elected officials have to stick to those. So I do my best to communicate what those are. Before I vote on anything, I explain to people how I'm going to vote, why I'm going to vote that way. And in 30 years, I've been more elections in Collegeville than anybody, and people appreciate that. And even when they're violently opposed to what I'm doing, they have to say, well, I understand what you're doing, and I would do it different, but I understand what you're doing. And so have the facts, do your homework. And I always tell people, nobody's going to outdo me in doing homework, because that's how you get your facts. And many times, what you have to be careful of, we all know this, politicians are great at messaging. And many times their messaging is designed to present something different than the truth. And so you have to know your facts, and the only way you're going to deal with that is to be able to present the facts back to everyone, and ask questions. Don't argue. My wife taught me this. She's much smarter than me. Always ask questions. Ask questions. You know the fact. Ask questions. Don't say, don't direct, don't argue. Ask questions. They give you an answer, ask another question. Keep asking questions. And once you get good at this, you always can come up with another question. And that's how you determine what their true intent is. You want them to talk. You don't want to talk. You want them to talk, because when they're talking, you're going to learn things, and many times you're going to learn things they don't want you to learn. And that's very valuable in what we're trying to do. If you don't understand a position they have, again, ask. If you don't understand, ask again. Ask. But you got to be there. You got to talk to them. You got to have a relationship that allows you to do that in the sense that they're going to sit down and listen to you for a while. And then follow up. Follow up with them. If they're taking a position that's contrary to principles or contrary to facts, you need to point that out. Whether you're friends or not, I'm okay with being friends. I'll say I'm friends with all these people, even the ones that are opposed. That's okay. It's personal is different than what we're trying to do from a political perspective. And so those are my thoughts right now.
All right, so I'm Murphy. As Fran said, I worked for Jonathan Stickland for almost 5 years. So I'll give you two different perspectives. Obviously, one working in a legislative office and on the campaign side, and then the second as well, just being an activist in my community. So I'll start with Jonathan. So a lot of what has already been shared, I will just highlight and give you that perspective from the legislative office. And to Mayor Newton's point, I think it's really, really important as an activist, if you have your issue or issues that you care about, when you go into offices or communicate with an elected official, it's always important, again, to know the facts and do your research. I think the biggest takeaway I can give you is, as I'm sure Connie can attest to this as a senator, but as a state representative, there's a wide variety of issues that they are responsible for voting on. And there is no way that they can know every single issue perfectly, right? That's why we rely on you as liaisons, you as activists. If there are issues that you care about, go in there with your one-pager, go in there with the facts and present those. I think that's a very great way to establish those relationships and establish credibility, so you can be leaned upon, not only from the elected official, but also the staff. Number two, I will say, I know everyone's already said it, but Tim made a great point about, being friendly, attracting the flies instead of throwing vinegar at first, and I think that really does make a huge difference. Still to this day, I have wonderful relationships with a lot of people in House District 92, HEB. I've driven that district a lot, and so I will say it really does make an impact, and I think the more, again, that you can do your research, stay off of social media, and just be very transparent. I mean, it's amazing what a phone call or a one-on-one conversation can do for you and that relationship and just working in the community. I will say there were numerous times, not only being down in Austin, but being in the district, where you would see a lot of the same faces, whether they were volunteers maybe on the campaign before, but again, they established those relationships. We always worked together, but it was always a mutually beneficial relationship. It wasn't a one-way street, which I think is super important to remember. So always know that there's a time and place, right? Campaigns are a great way to get plugged in and really help that candidate, support them, and support the cause, again, if you align with those values and principles. And then always know when that legislative season comes around, when they're in session, be sure to still show up, and that accountability is key. It's always already been said before, but again, keep it to the policy and the facts and not personal. I think that's where you really can muddy those waters. And even, I'll put my activist hat on too, is whenever it comes to fighting at the local level, state level, regardless of what it is, the more you can stick to the facts and stick to, highlight what the campaign is saying or the candidate is saying or the school board, and go back to the facts and dig into the research, and make the ties between. I mean, that's so important. I mean, don't just take what your local newspaper says. You know, don't just take what you saw on social media and claim that as fact. It's so important to do the research. It takes time, it's a lot of work, but that's the great thing about having liaisons and having fellow members, whether it's in your neighborhood or community, who are just as passionate and actively involved too. Split up the work, you know, kill a couple birds with one stone, so you can do it. Also from the legislative side too, I will say, always, you know, with those issues that you care about or whatever that one issue is, if you're representing True Texas or representing yourself as just someone who cares about, you know, vaccine choice, just as an example, go in there, present yourself like as yourself, but go in there with your one pager. I mean, it really is truly amazing what it means to an elected official and their office staff as well, because you're going to be the person that they call upon, right? Because as an office, they vote on, you know, tons of issues. We don't have all the time in the world to read every piece of Texas code. It's difficult, so we rely upon you, and that's really where you can start to foster that relationship even deeper, because when it comes time to testify in committees or show up to kind of rally people, mobilize to show up to the Capitol or be active in your district, that is so important. So I will put on my activist hat as an activist in my community. We did a lot of school board work as well with the tax ratification elections. If you recall, they were doing them all across the state in 2018. If you're passionate about an issue and you show up consistently, to Fran's point, they'll know your name, they'll start to recognize you. And being new in our community at that time, I was up in arms about they were going to raise our taxes, and I'm like a first-time homeowner. What does that mean? I mean, that's a lot of money, right? So that was just me, you know, being 27 and saying we got to do something. And so obviously my husband and I, we have a lot of experience in politics, and we met some, you know, people in the district, moms, teachers, things like that, and we rallied and we organized. And I will tell you, we were not successful in defeating the TRE. As you know, it's very much an uphill battle to fight these issues. But I will say the community knows who we are. We show up, even when it comes to city council races or just local bond issues. They know that we're the ones that are going to be looking, digging, figuring out the facts, and putting them out there to people. I will say after that, our school district actually hired some community outreach people. They spent a lot more money to get this most recent bond passed. So I will say, I mean, even though I kind of kick myself, I'm like, dang it, they got in front of it and they did all this stuff, spending more of our money. But I will say, it does matter, and it was just 4 people, right? Like, we organized 4 people, we started a PAC, we raised money, we connected in the community, and that's what really matters. I mean, to Tim's point, it only took a couple of people to start a revolution. So I will say your voice does matter, and even to this day, I mean, critical race theory is very much in Richardson ISD, and there were families that organized because they found out that LGBTQ books were put in the libraries and people were up in arms and upset about it. Now, I will say that there are some of these people who have access and would much rather have those relationships with some of these local elected officials, but they're more than willing to feed us information about what's really going on. So we'll use it because they know that we're passionate, we care, we stick to the facts, and we believe in doing the right thing. I don't care about access. I would much rather do the right thing. So anyways, to that degree, it makes a difference. If you feel like you're just the only one fighting, I promise you you're not. Just talk to your neighbors. It's amazing. I mean, I know in a world of social media, a lot of people don't know who they live next door to or across the street from. And so just making those points to talk to people about what they care about, because I guarantee you, if you feel like that you're that one person, but you're active and you're out in the community, they're going to know who you are. So always, if you're doing it for the right reasons and fighting for the right things, keep doing it. It matters. And also, I will say, too, to that point with my activist hat, with any elections that are happening, do your research, okay? Again, I know Fran mentioned Mitchell's really good at doing that stuff, but even as just an individual person, I'm all about following the money, okay? If you don't know how to use certain Texas Ethics Commission or other websites, it is so imperative, because I will tell you a great example, as I'm sure you all know, local races, they claim to be nonpartisan, okay? That is the biggest joke we've ever heard, right? So I will tell you, every time you hear that, I encourage you, go look these people's names up, okay? They've probably donated to a campaign, or they've been affiliated with some organization. I will tell you, the World Wide Web is a beautiful thing. So let's use it for the right reasons. And I tell you, when you follow that money and you expose that, because that's fact. You can't fudge a Texas ethics report. You and I can't do that. But you can go and track that money, and I guarantee you, if that person, let's say we had a candidate in our district, run for city council, he was promoting a lot of socialist policies, and every person that ran this time around, I emailed every single one of them. What are your policies? What are your positions? If they didn't have a website, and if they did, I had a lot of questions. And you'd be amazed. They were just alarmed. I mean, some people just think because I've lived in a city for so many years, I'm good. I've been here 30 years. Okay, that's how old I am. I don't care if that's how long you've been here. I want to know what you want to do for the future. I plan to be here for a while, right? So, ask them questions. Do the research. Follow the money. This one gentleman, again, with the socialist policies, everyone was like, oh, he's great, he's great. Well, I went and saw that Act Blue, he had donated for years to Act Blue. And I was like, okay, this is not a nonpartisan race, like, come on, right? So I let him know very, very professionally why I was not going to be supporting him and why. And so I put that out there, hey, this guy's, backed by Act Blue. Our Richardson area Democrat group was behind a lot of these candidates secretively. So just do your research, follow the money. That is so key, because there's a lot that gets hidden that's not going to be put on their website or put out on social media, but I guarantee you follow the money, you'll figure it out. So those are really my takeaways, is do your research, do your homework, follow the money, show up consistently, and connect with people in your community, because oftentimes I find and feel that I'm the only one, or we're the only people that care about the future, but I guarantee you're not. So figure out a way to connect with people, and just keep at it.
So before Chris goes, just want to make sure everybody knows, because there's probably a handful of people there that don't know. So he's a Collin County judge. People hear judge, you think a lot of folks, I'm finding, think that's somebody in a black robe sitting behind a bench deciding cases. County judge in Texas is a very different position. So 254 counties in Texas, they're all governed, the county government's all governed by a commissioner's court, which is 4 commissioners and 1 county judge. County judge presides over the commissioner's court. The commissioner's court is responsible for the DA's budget, the civil court's budget, the criminal court's budget, the tax assessor's budget, in Tarrant County, the hospital district budget, Mississippi Sheriff's Office budget. So it's county government is a huge undertaking. So he doesn't sit there in a black robe deciding objection overruled. He is the chief executive officer of Collin County's government. That's what county judge is. Chris.
And if I could say really quickly, over this past year, you probably learned a lot about your county.
Yes.
Because they closed down your businesses and told you what you couldn't do medically. Sorry, just wanted to throw that in. But he was great.
Yes.
He was one of the good ones.
Yes.
Appreciate you adding that. I was going to have to say, we didn't all shut down your business.
Right.
Yes. No, I'm not.
Well, I appreciate that. You're right. I think the Commissioner's Court and the county judge is one of the most misunderstood positions in Texas government. And certainly before COVID, we really didn't know a lot about our Commissioner's Court or our county judges. I appreciate you letting me come over from Collin County. Thanks for welcoming me across county lines. I see some of my Collin County friends here, so thank you for having us over here with you, and it's good to be with like-minded folks. I commend you for being here this morning. I commend you for being engaged and involved. I'll tell you that's how I started as well. I started helping others in their campaigns many, many years ago, and then served as a precinct chair and just started to get more involved. And at the beginning, it all feels very overwhelming, but you start to learn more and you start to get a handle on more of the process, and then some of you are going to be on a path, hopefully, to run for office at some point. And I commend you for being engaged this morning to do that. I have a few takeaways for you, a few points points for you, and I'm pleased to hear that almost all of them, or all of them, have already been covered by my colleagues. The first I would say is stay the course. And remember, this is a long game that we're in. And we tend to get very energized around the election cycles. It's very cyclical. We get all our resources ready to go. And then win or lose, we tend to take a break. And we take time off. Now, we have to do that. Of course, that's part of the rhythm of life. But remember to stay the course in the interim as well. Being engaged and being involved, even when there's not an election, gets you a lot more attention from the elected officials because everyone's paying attention to the election cycle. But when you come to meetings in the interim, in the off times, they'll notice you a lot more and they'll see, okay, this is somebody who's staying engaged. And of course, immediately, if you start coming to meetings and stay engaged, they're going to think you're running for office.
Yeah.
They're going to wonder if you're running against them. And that's a good thing because as soon as they start wondering that, they're paying attention to you. So stay the course and be engaged for the long term. The second one is build relationships, as we've heard often here this morning. I count among my friends some that are very liberal. And of course, obviously, many that are very conservative. And then I have some that are very conservative that I don't consider friends. They're like-minded, they want the same thing, but they're just not friendly. And so I would say build relationships. Now sometimes there are always times in life or people in life that we just can't seem to build a relationship with. I understand that. But for the pattern, build relationships, even with those that are in office that you disagree with. Because those relationships are going to be important to get you an audience. Because those folks who are friendly and those folks who are respectful and polite, I will always take a meeting with them and give them an audience, even if I know they don't have my values. And I will hear them, and I will listen to them, and if I've already known them, I will know they're going to say something that I probably can't support, but I'm going to hear and see what I can learn anyway. So building relationships is very important and opens doors for you. The next one, what was my next point? Sorry. Shining a light. Your role as liaisons is a great way for you, and you need to be in a position to shine a light on what government's doing. Now, part of that is just you being there and showing up, which goes right along with staying the course. But as you are in the meetings and as you are paying attention, as you are having conversations with them, just by doing that, you are shining a light. But you're also holding them accountable. You are bringing the accountability. You are bringing the transparency. You might find that it's important to ask for a Freedom of Information Act to submit a request. You might find that it's important for you to just ask questions or speak during public comments in a meeting. But all of those actions are part of you shining a light on what's going on. At the very least, they know that you're watching. Your elected officials know that you're paying attention, and that's important for them to see that you're watching and paying attention. And then my last point, which I've already heard also, is know the issues. Very important to know the issues, because if you get that meeting or you speak during public comments and you happen to be completely wrong on the issue, that will hurt your credibility. Now, it's hard to know all the right points about all the issues from the beginning, but the good news is, and I've heard this as well, the elected officials might just be learning about the issue as well. So they might just be learning about, especially in state government, city government, county government, I suspect in schools as well. There's so many different issues, such a broad difference of issues that a lot of times they're just learning as well. So when you come and you know the issues and you know how to speak to it, it gives you credibility and it helps you with all those other three areas.
Thank you so much, Fran, for inviting us. Thank you, Tim, very much for your generous comments. It's really great to be with you all this morning. I'm Hannah Smith, and I was just elected to be the school board trustee in place 5 for Carroll ISD. Tim has given you a great overview of what happened in our community in Southlake. And I thought what would be most helpful for me to do today is just to talk a little bit about how we organized our amazing warriors, because I think that is most transferable to what you all are going to do as liaisons and as warriors for the True Texas Project. We had just an amazing group of people in our community, and it really took everyone working together to accomplish our 40-point win in the school board election on May 1st. Tim has alluded to several of those actions, but I just want to encourage you to know your warriors. That's my message to you, is to know the talents and the skills and the strengths of the people that you are going to be working with to accomplish what you need to get done. We had just an amazingly diverse group of people who had skills that we could capitalize on that helped us win. And I'm just going to go through some of those areas so that you can kind of consider in your mind, like, how could I use this for our purposes with the True Texas Project? So Tim alluded to the open records requests. He said we did over 400. That seems about right. I mean, we did a ton of open records requests. I drafted some of them. We had other lawyers that were on the legal committee. Scott Cox is here, who was on our legal committee for the South Lake Families PAC. A bunch of lawyers who had experience in drafting discovery-like questions stepped forward to help out draft those open records requests. But we also had a bunch of people who had never drafted anything like that before in their lives, and they just wanted to know. And when an issue came up, they just shot off an open records request. We had an awesome woman who helped us keep track of all of the open records requests as they came back, and she created a log on a Google Drive that we all shared so that we could have access to all the documents, so that when we needed to craft talking points or when we needed to talk in public comments, we could go back to our database of documents that we had collected from the open records requests and use them against the school district. When they claimed something, we showed them that's not true. So getting your team together that knows how to do that kind of thing is really helpful. We had amazing communication strategy. Some of this was the PAC and their professional communications public relations team that they used, but some of it was really grassroots and homegrown. We found a mom who loved putting together these videos, and she just used really cheap video making software that she knew how to use, and she would splice and dice video from school board meetings and interactions between the school board president and people at the podium talking, and sort of the conversations they would have sometime, and she sliced and diced those and put them into these short 1-minute videos that we then spun out through social media, and they went viral. And she was amazing at helping us with that strategy. We had a Facebook group where everyone got together on Facebook and educated each other on issues that were important to us. The website that the South Lake Families PAC put up had amazing resources for everyone to utilize. And then just, social media, Instagram, Twitter, all of that, email blasts. We just utilized everything to get everyone informed and up to date. Mitchell Ryan is here. He's one of our amazing precinct chairs. And really, we relied on our precinct chairs so much in our district to help get the news out to their constituencies. We had folks who were precinct chairs in Grapevine knock doors for us, and for our race, that really made a difference because we have a pocket of Grapevine that's in Carroll ISD, and so we really relied on those precinct chairs to help get the news out to their constituencies. Canvassing, we hired professional canvassers, but we had awesome volunteer canvassers, and Hillary Rabeler is here today, and she was one of our amazing door knockers, and we had a team of volunteers who put together just an amazing outreach campaign, knocking door to door, and educating our community not only about our campaigns, but about CCAP and why it was bad for our school district. Public comments. This was really remarkable. We had some warriors who were just amazing at delivering public comments. And we would meet before the scheduled school board meetings in a woman's home, and I had sort of a whiteboard that I would just draw the topics on, and we would collect, ideas on what topics we wanted to speak on, and then we would just assign the topics out to the people in the room. Who wants to talk about this? Who wants to talk about that? And then we would help them draft talking points, and we would offer to go over their speeches. If they wanted to send me their speech beforehand, I could look it over and give them comments or potential edits. So preparing your group to organize to give effective public comments, I think, is one of the most important things you can do, because you can help them be more focused, to stay on topic, to really utilize your time well, and to send a message through the public comments that you want to send to the government body that you're before. Fundraising, we had amazingly generous donors. We had 2 school board races that we ran, my race in place 5 and then Cam Bryan's place in place 4. And both of us raised over $60,000 for each of our races, which is just a phenomenal amount of money for a school board race. But people were so concerned about our district and so concerned about the education for their children in the future that they opened their pocketbooks just so generously for us. But having those people who knew the community, who knew, people that would contribute at high levels. So having those fundraising chair people was really helpful too. Event planners, we had over 70 meet and greets during our campaign, 70 in a 3-month period, which was a lot of meet and greets. But we knew that there were people who love to plan these kind of events. Again, know your warriors, know who loves to plan these kinds of fun events and can get the crowd to turn out to hear your message. And then finally, your moms. We had some amazing moms. And they were home watching what was happening on their children's computer screens and seeing what the teachers were teaching and seeing what was happening on Brain Pop. And they came to us and said, this is just not acceptable. And so we went to the district and we said, we should no longer fund Brain Pop because they are pushing a leftist agenda. And so we got Brain Pop removed. But the moms were the ones who connected us not only to the curriculum, but also to the teachers. And so we were able to get quotes from teachers inside the district who said, we can't speak out on this because we'll lose our job, but we support you 100% and we want you to win. So don't underestimate your stay-at-home moms. They are a force to be reckoned with, and use them effectively, and that's how we won.
Awesome.
Give her a round of applause for that. So, what we're going to do now moving forward, we're going to try. We got a lot of good questions, and we got a couple bad ones, but we got some really good questions, and I'm gonna ask them, and I'd like to get through them all. I don't know if we can because there's quite a few, and I see there's more coming. So what we're going to do on the panel is one panel member take a question, maybe 2, and then we'll go to the next one instead of having all 5 give their opinions. So first one, in no particular order, is it a conflict of interest that the taxing entities elect members of the appraisal district? You want a shot at that one? Thank you.
No, I don't think. On that, it's on. It's on. No, I don't think it is. Now, I think there's a lot of flaws in how the elections are done, because the way the elections are done, if you don't know, taxing entities elect them based on the population of the entity. So small cities like Colleyville only have very few votes. Guess who has the big votes? Big cities like Fort Worth, all the school district, the county has their own. So, if you just listen to that, you may not have figured out. The same people are counted over and over to get votes. So the big guys always elect the TAD board members. Very hard for the small cities to do it. Of course, these elections are done based on their own interest. And believe me, we could talk about TAD a long time and how the assessments are done and what it means to the taxing entities. I'm not saying it's good that the taxing entities elect them. There was several legislative actions this session to address that. One of them did pass. One of them was to change the voting rules to let citizens do it. I was in favor of that, by the way. I think that's a good way to do it because that would be equitable and fair. But the one thing that did change was the bigger entities waited to the bitter end. So you have this whole, you can vote, the entities can vote practically at any time until the end. And so the big guys wait to the end, see what all the little guys did, and they can allocate their vote to different people. And they'd allocate the vote to be sure they got their people in office. So what Fran was talking about, we've got 2 new people on there because a bunch of some school boards who had a lot of votes and a bunch of small guys like us got together. A lot of hard work was put in there and voted for the same people and accomplished getting 2 on the board. That would have never been done before. And those guys are doing some good, although it's an uphill battle because they don't have majorities.
It's tilted, highly tilted in favor of the large cities in the county. It's another thing that, nobody pays attention to county government.
That's right.
And this is why who is in those county government positions matters. But go ahead, Chris.
In Collin County, it's a bit different. I don't know if perhaps it's just different than Tarrant County, but we have, at the county level, we could not elect any of the Collin County board members. We've tried, but we don't have enough votes. The votes are proportional based on the tax revenues that are collected by each government in the district. So in Collin County, all of the voting strength is by the school districts. And so we even looked a few years ago and tried to say, okay, and let's say whatever our votes are, we get a certain voting strength. We can divide that or we can unify it. Even if we took all of our votes and gave them to one person, we would still be the 6th largest taxing entity in the county, even though we're the county. And so we couldn't pick our own person. So we've got to find ways to find a conservative city council or a conservative school district and pool our votes and say, okay, well, let's both vote for this particular person, and then we can get somebody in. But whoever brings in the most revenue has the most votes, whichever entity.
All right, so we'll go to the next question. How does a candidate challenge an incumbent with big corporate PAC money? Incumbents have such a small turnover rate and huge advantage.
Yeah.
It doesn't, honestly, I think I have heard from consultants that I very much respect that that's actually not completely true, that the one with the most money wins. Now, I can't sit here and tell you that for a fact, but I have heard that from them and said, there are really plenty of races out there where people, it's the grassroots momentum, it's the hard work, it's the boots on the ground, and they can win. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's hard, it's easy to beat the big money, particularly the bigger the race, right? If we're talking statewide Texas race, Texas is a huge state. It's not like a little Rhode Island or something like that, right? So you need a lot of money to get on TV and get out mailers and that kind of thing. And really, you can't really be boots on the ground for the whole state of Texas, right? So the bigger the race, the harder it is, I think, more than anything, to beat an incumbent with a lot of money. I don't necessarily think that's true as you keep going down the ballot. It's more about the hard work, getting the word out, talking about the issues, not being personal about you as people who are helping that candidate very much are a reflection of the candidate. So remember that always. So if you're out there bad-mouthing and saying incorrect things and slandering, that does not help that grassroots candidate who is very much trying to be an incumbent. That's really, it's hard. It is hard, there's no doubt.
I agree with Connie that money is not what wins races. It is grassroots. Money doesn't win, votes win. We all know that. As people talk about, well, are you going to do signs? Signs don't win elections. Votes win elections, and that's all we're trying to get. Money is to try to influence and get momentum running, and that's what everything's trying to do. Signs are all about building momentum and influencing the voters so you can get those votes. And if I had a choice of having the most money or the most grassroots, I would take grassroots every single time. Money's great if you have it in your campaign, but do not be discouraged because we have a grassroots army on the conservative side, and that's how we win.
Just a quick comment. I agree with both of those comments very much so. Murphy said something that really got my attention, talking about local elections, and they're nonpartisan, and she laughed, and she's right. But they technically are nonpartisan, and what means when the candidates are running, they don't declare a party. But what's been interesting the last 5 or 6 years, especially the last several, that turned Texas blue, the effort to come into Texas has been horrendous. And I thought about this because the amount of money that's coming into this state is unbelievable, even right down to the city elections. And strategies, very thoughtful strategies are going into this at the local elections, which are quote nonpartisan. That literally, you do have Democrats running as Republicans because in cities like Colleyville, they know that's the only chance they have of winning. And what I noticed is, so I made a comment, they've challenged us every year since 2016 really hard, however, and they've learned. And so this last election, same thing happened. A ton of money came in from all over the place, not to Colleyville. They had candidates that were just flat out liberals, although they're saying they're Republicans. And they started assuming our talk points, which were totally ludicrous because they weren't going to do any of that. But they understood if they didn't have those same talk points, they didn't have a chance. Unfortunately, there wasn't no issues for them to run on, so they lost again. But which is good. So I just thought that was interesting.
We had a school board candidate in Carroll ISD that got up at a forum and said that they were a registered independent. Now, those of you know how ridiculous that is. But this same person did not realize there were a couple of people in the room smarter than she was who went back the moment she said she was running and screenshotted everything she had on Facebook. So there's pictures of her hugging Beto, pictures of her. So she's telling everybody she's independent. She's telling everybody she sometimes votes Republican. Well, we get her donation record. Act blue, act blue, act blue, act blue. Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden. Beto, 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 Beto. Pictures of her. And so one of the mailers we did, the most fun I've ever had putting together a mailer, was putting her pictures of all that and then her quote about how independent and sometimes Republican she is.
I'm sorry, I was just going to add something. It's so sad, but it's my own race as an example. When I was running for state senate again, we had the money, we had the infrastructure, we had the grassroots support, we had everything. But we were running the year that Beto was running. And Beto had grassroots support like y'all we hadn't seen in Tarrant County in a long time. He basically did in Texas that year what Trump did on the national scale, right? The Democrats were like, who the hell are these people voting for Trump? Basically, that's what Beto did in Texas. He brought in people that nobody even knew, young, old, whatever, because they were energized. And they walked in, and this is statistically true. We've got all the data to prove it. And they voted straight ticket all the way down. And that's why we lost so much in Tarrant County. Harris County lost 59 Republican judges in Harris County because of the Beto election. So my race is actually an example of how you can have the money, you can have everything, you can be everywhere all the time, and somebody else comes in and brings in people because of the grassroots momentum and can beat an incumbent.
But they also hired people straight off of Craigslist.
Oh,
My
absolutely.
precinct was walked for 3 months.
Exactly.
This is South Denton County.
Exactly. And they were new voters. I mean, we walked our district, we walked it 3 times as well. And we were reaching out to the voters, but there were voters in apartment complexes that he brought in. There were all these different voters that had not voted before. And so they brought them in.
But it was money. It was Soros money and Beto money. Hiring.
And momentum. I mean, it was, the media didn't hurt, did it? It was all Beto all the time, right?
All right, next question. Why are there almost never any conservative people running to fill local judge positions?
Well, we're not here to talk about TimO'Hare.com.
I'm assuming this person is referring to actual judges behind the bench.
Oh,
Yes.
oh, is it on the
I
bench?
vote all the time, and every time there's a judge opening, it's a Democrat, and nobody running against them.
And you're talking about courtroom judges,
Yeah.
is what
Talking about Dallas County.
Yes, I'm in Irving, and so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That matters.
That's a great question. It's a great question subject. I want to bring this up real quick. So, I was born and raised in Dallas County. Lived there for 44 years, or 43, I guess, until we moved to Tarrant County, moved to South Lake. I think now more than ever, than we've ever seen, people move to places based on politics. So, in Dallas County, and I may get the number wrong, I don't know if it was 2005 or 2006 or 7, let's call it 2006. 2006, Dallas County elections, about 52-48, Republican versus Democrat. So anybody know, I'm sure you do, what Dallas County was in this last election? It was 67% blue, 33% red. So what the people that get elected say, what they stand for, determines where people are moving. And people are researching now on the internet more than ever. Take Fort Worth, for example. And I'm not bringing this up for any reason whatsoever, but 10 years ago, Fort Worth was solid Republican.
Yes.
Solid.
That's right.
10 years later, it's solid Democrat. How does that happen? It happens when the elected officials don't stand up for our policies, don't stand up for our views, and so people say, I want to go over there. That's how it happens. So, Dallas County, I mean, I'm not going to lie, that's a tough spot. I don't see Dallas County ever going red again. Tarrant County, if we're not careful, the same thing will happen to us. Chris, what's Collin County, what's the margin of victory for y'all in Collin County typical race?
It's getting worrisome, isn't it?
Yeah.
For 2020, our countywide officials, not including President Trump, who was a bit different than all the others, were winning 55 to 45 with about a 60,000 vote margin. And we won the Republicans won all the races. But it's closer than we've seen in decades.
Same thing happened in Denton County.
So we've got to be careful.
All right, so this is a school board question, so maybe Hannah, you want to take this. Have you seen any anti-Semitic textbooks or teaching? And please be aware this is happening in many schools.
I have not seen textbook or curriculum issues, but I have heard from some Orthodox Jewish friends in our school district that there had been some incidents just related to anti-Semitism by kids on the bus. A good friend who is a mom of 5 kids and Orthodox Jewish conservative woman in our community, for example, said that, her kid was on the bus and someone said to him, gas the Jews, wrote a swastika on their notebook and those sorts of things. So I know that it's happening, and during the recent issues and tensions in the Middle East, just in the last couple of weeks or months, we did get some emails to the school board raising the issue. What are we doing to protect our Jewish community here in Southlake because of the political tensions that were in the Middle East and so forth. So I haven't seen any in the curriculum, not in actual teaching in the classroom, but certainly there are some isolated incidences that I've heard of outside of the classroom.
Also, liaison for State Board of Education would be really, really good for somebody too, right? That's another one that people don't pay attention to, and they're the ones that are, okaying the curriculum. They're the ones that are dealing with the critical race theory, all that kind of stuff.
So yeah, that's a really good point. And we were very close with our State Board of Education rep, Pat Hardy, for Region 11. And she came to a bunch of my campaign events. She was very involved with us behind the scenes in talking about how we could defeat critical race theory on the state level. But she, told us that, even among the State Board of Education folks that she was dealing with, this was an issue that she was having to push back against. So I could not agree with that more. We really need to have liaisons reach out to those folks as well.
And we do not currently have any liaisons assigned to any State Board of Education.
That would be an important one, no question. All right, so here's a couple of questions that are basically the same question, I think, are pretty darn close. So it's one, it feels futile being a constituent of a deep blue district and being completely outnumbered to speak with one's representative. Do you bother engaging or cut your losses to focus on other areas? And then similar question, both my Texas rep and senator in Dallas County are Democrats. What is the best way to get them to depart from their party line and represent my view?
So I will say, and Tim alluded to this, or someone alluded to this earlier in the presentation, we had people who were Democrats in our school board race in Carroll come to our events and say to us, I'm a classical liberal Democrat. I'm not a radical progressive leftist. And I agree with your concerns over the Speak App because you are talking about free speech. You're talking about due process protections. You're talking about freedom of association and freedom of religion. And as a classical liberal, those ideas are very much what I agree with. And so I've always sort of divided up the left into two segments, sort of the classical liberals, little l, and then the more progressive, radical leftists that are at the forefront of the CRT movement. And if you can, identify the difference between those two and form positive relationships with the classical liberals, I think you'll actually find that you have some shared interests and shared principles that can help form some alliances together.
And I'll just add to that. So I live in Dallas County, the most northern part. I'm almost in Collin, and I kind of wish I was on the other side, but here we are. So I will just add to that too. I think I've always been one. Obviously, I'm very conservative, and you interact with a lot of people who may not share your views. But I have always had the idea that regardless of views, right? Regardless of you're liberal or you're conservative, there's always a place where you can find alignment. And so I always try to focus in on that, on where can we align and fight for that same thing instead of just completely discrediting them because they're liberal. So just for example, with our most recent school board election, there was a very hotly contested race. There were 6 people in the race. A lot of people were rallying, conservative Christians were rallying behind one of these candidates. And there were some people that came to this meet and greet that my husband and I were at, very, very liberal. But they obviously were there for a reason, and to your point, I mean, there were some issues that they did agree with. And they were like, we're here to fight for these things. And so I think all things aside, I mean, my state rep is very liberal. I've called, I've sent emails, I never get a response, so I've forgotten about her. But for those very, very hyper-local races, I try to find alignment with my representatives there to see where we can fight for the same things.
County-wide races in Dallas County, I mean, I think you have to face facts, all pretty much unwinnable, barring something crazily unforeseen like the DA with all his problems he had. But local races, still winnable. You can still get enough conservatives out or moderates out or even liberals that are on your side on things like school boards and city councils. So I think that's where I would focus if I lived in Dallas County or lower level races where you can still win things because everybody doesn't just say RD. Okay. This one's for Connie. The legislature has gone home. How do we affect them now?
Yeah, great question. I always told everybody after being in the Senate particularly realize that the time to see your state senator and your state rep is during the interim. Do not wait until session starts because it's basically, you need to, I get it, right? You go to the office, let them know. Murphy's suggestion of a one-pager during the session is perfect. Also, another thing I want to add is do not feel like you've been slighted if you cannot actually speak to the senator or the rep. I will say, particularly a senator, this is just how it's set up. This is just the facts. It's 5 times the size of a House district. It's actually larger than a congressional district. So it's very, 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 very busy with constituents. You've also, because you've got so many fewer senators, you've got still a lot of committees. So you're on a lot of committees, or you may be chairing some committees. And so it's very, very hard to actually see the senator during session because they literally are running. I mean, we had appointments we could only take appointments for 15 minutes at a time. That's insane. I mean, you're just like cattle coming through, but that's the way it had to be done. So during session, please do not feel slighted if you have to talk to a staff member, because frankly, it's probably better. They're going to be the ones, because you're running, and they're going to be the ones that are going to be your memory for the senator. And then during the interim, now's the time to make those appointments. Of course, we've got upcoming special sessions, but nonetheless, see them in their district office. Sit down. This is when they have the time to sit down and talk with you. So this is really when it matters most, is during the interim.
So I'll add to that too, to Connie's point about the interim, that's so important. So while session's important, that interim, the accountability piece comes in, right? So if you've been lobbying your state rep or senator on an issue all session long, you've been showing up, maybe you've sent in testimony or you've sent emails, made phone calls, don't forget that, again, this is a long-term game, and it's not just about when they're in Austin every 2 years. It's about when they come back to the district, are you going to meet with them one-on-one and have those tough discussions, or praise them for what they did well and talk about those opportunities where they can do better? Because I guarantee you, if you're there all times of the year, they're going to remember you, and that's what's really important. I think that's why you as a liaison or you as an activist with True Texas is so, so important. It's about the whole process and following them through the entire cycle.
And don't forget, the legislation is not over yet. Special session, voter integrity, voter integrity, voter integrity is hugely important.
Yes.
All right, next question. If someone has never attended a school board meeting or spoken at a school board meeting, what advice do you have for them to get started?
I will answer that one. I would just say, if you have a chance to meet together with like-minded folks and just brainstorm some of the issues that you want to really push with your school board, I think that would be a great place to start. I think you should go back and watch any of the videos or audios that are recorded and posted up on your school board website, and look and just watch and see what have been the issues that they have been dealing with recently, and how has your school board voted on those issues. So familiarize yourself with what they've been doing over the last several months, and then be ready to, address them with facts. This is how you voted on this. That's why I don't agree with it. Here's what I think you should do. But I think showing up in numbers is really important, because if you just show up by yourself, you can make a really impassioned 2-minute or 5-minute speech. Sometimes our school board only gave us 1 minute. Can you believe that? So honestly, you have to come with a speech that has sections in it that you can delete on the fly if you only have a minute to talk. But you're going to have much more of an impact if you show up with 25 people as opposed to just one person. So have a meeting beforehand like we did, prepare what the subjects are you're going to talk about, write talking points together, and you can string together a really effective narrative if you have 25 to 50 people show up rather than just one.
Hannah, how specifically in your campaign for school board did you get teacher support?
So the South Lake Families PAC did a really awesome thing. They sent an open records request to the district and requested all of the work email addresses for all of the teachers and staff in our district. The district had to turn them over to us. So they put all of those email addresses into a database, and then they crafted a letter, and they sent that letter to the entire network of teachers and staff in all of our district. And the letter basically said, we are here to support you, we want to be your voice, and we want you to respond to this email with what you are seeing inside your classrooms. And so we got these amazing quotes from teachers who were anonymous, and they said, we do not want critical race theory in our schools. Please fight as much as you can against it because we support you. And then all of those anonymous quotes were put up on the South Lake Families PAC website. So we could refer to them in public comments. We could refer to them in our campaigns. It was really a very effective strategy, and one that I would recommend.
That's huge, because as we know, as parents that have to fight school board taxes all the time, we know it's a machine, right? It is a dadgum machine, and they have all these, email addresses, and I've always wondered how. So you just did an open records request and got those email addresses.
Correct. Yeah.
Arrow. Y'all write that down. That's awesome.
There's power in numbers. So when some of the teachers or coaches saw that others did it, they said, well, here, can you use mine? Some of them then called and said, I don't use my name. And we didn't because we wanted to protect them. But yeah, it was pretty cool. All right, here's one. I don't know if anybody can answer this. Would it be possible to write legislation to stop the Cambridge Group LLC, a subsidiary of Maxfield Real Estate Group, from buying real estate in Texas to stop their incubator project? Anybody want to touch that one?
I mean, I don't know the specifics, I don't know the details, but absolutely go to your rep and your senator and talk to them about that. And now's the time, not when they go to Austin, because by the time they get to Austin, they've got their legislation ready to go. It's too late at that point. So right now, whoever wrote that question, Maybe there's a possibility. I don't know. That's how it starts. With an idea like this, you talk to your rep, your senator, and say, this is what I want to do. They'll look into it now. They'll get all the necessary, I don't know, they'll just look into all the issues, and they'll either tell you, we can't do this, or yeah, we can do this. So, absolutely, anything's possible.
What's an incubator project?
Anybody want to?
And how do we get rid of it?
What it is, because I was talking to, I did research on it, because my coworkers are having problems with their apartment complexes. They're not fixing anything in their apartment complexes, and basically there's really nothing they can do about it. And it turns out that they have been purchased by another group. But when you go down the rabbit hole figuring out who's behind it, it's that company that's there, the Cambridge project. And what it is, the incubator project is where they will provide money for people who want to buy businesses or buildings or whatever it is. And they hold a certain percentage of the value of the business or whatever it is. So at the end, they either have to pay like a balloon payment if they want to sell it, but they're constantly having to give. It's almost like a mafia style racketeering.
It's part of socialism, it's pushing into socialism.
I mean, they may determine, your legislator may determine that it's something for more along the lines of a lawsuit, but they can look into it. There may be other ways than actual legislation too, and they can help you with that.
Yeah, and I'm guessing somebody or multiple somebodies have gone to the city to have them check to see if there's something that's out of code, the problems they're complaining of. I mean, that's the first place I'd go is call the city and complain of what's going on.
Well, it's not even local because they're
From another
they're
state.
yeah, well not even. They're from Canada. The actual organization is from Canada, and the actual headquarters is in Shanghai.
If there's a specific problem with the apartment complex, like the water's not working right, or the windows are cracked or whatever, calling the city, they'll come out and do a check to see if they are complying with their code ordinances. So that may be a way to address some of it, not the long-term thing.
But they're buying like apartment complexes all over the area. She lives in Ellis County. My other friend lives in Garland. I mean, it's everywhere. They're sending notices in our neighborhood. I live in Carrollton, to our homes, like offering ridiculous amount of money for our homes.
It's like that bedrock project that they were doing.
Yes.
Yes, and that's all backed by the CCP.
All right, we have 4 questions left. Let me get to them so we can get
how
to
do we
all of them.
stop
Thank you for sharing that. And this is for
The whole
Murphy.
neighborhood.
Representative Stickland's office was always a hangout for grassroots activists while visiting the Capitol. How important was it to have grassroots down there to keep him grounded and hold him accountable?
I don't know who wrote this, but that's great. Who wrote that question? So I think having grassroots around, having people in the office, and having that open door policy is really, really important. It does keep them grounded. They, thankfully, I'll just use Jonathan as an example. I mean, he's surrounded himself with amazing staff, and I'm not just saying that because I was on staff. I mean, we had really solid staff, and we were with him from the very beginning. And so it's so important, especially with these guys that go down there. And Connie always had wonderful staff as well. But we're with them 24/7, and the more that you guys show up, if you supported during the campaign or volunteer or have Jonathan's number on speed dial, just as an example, it's always nice to have that reinforcement and encouragement when you're just getting beat down constantly. I remember when he first ran, his first yard sign, I know True Texas was Northeast Tea Party at the time, but everyone had signed this sign, and he had it framed in his office, and that was incredibly meaningful. I mean, we had that through the entirety of him being in office, and so even pictures with different supporters that would come by. I mean, it matters, and it makes a difference, and I know sometimes it's hard to get to Austin, but even during the times when, we're here in the district, there's district directors for both Senate and state representatives. So show up, be a part of it, even if it's a phone call while they're down there or a text message, it matters. To Connie's point, everyone's really active on social media, and elected officials get their panties in a wad when they see things, and so it's very true. But the same goes for just a nice, subtle, encouraging text message. Hey, we're thinking about you. Hey, we're praying for you. They matter, and I can't tell you how much that would turn a frown from being beat up down on the floor to, oh my gosh, I'm doing the right thing. So all of that matters, even if you can't be there physically. Always have that in the back of your mind. Think of sending a card or a text message. So it matters.
All right, here's another Murphy question, probably, although I guess anyone can answer that. What are your resources to follow the money that you mentioned earlier?
That's a great question. So I can't even say the word. Texas Ethics Commission is a great start. If you've never kind of dug around on Texas Ethics Commission, it's obviously just from a state perspective. So you can look at anything from a donor as a contributor. You can look up active PACs, what kind of money PACs have brought in, and candidates. So it's very, they've simplified it a little bit more, where it's a bit more user-friendly, but you can actually search campaign finance reports based on a period of time, a specific year. I mean, you can get into the nitty-gritty of it, but it's one of those things too. I'm sure someone in this room, Fran could probably give you some information too, but it's very easy to use once you've played around in a little bit. So Texas Ethics Commission is one. If you're looking at the federal level, so maybe like your congressman or something like that, the FEC, I believe it's .gov. That's also a way to track the money as well. So maybe someone that may not contribute at the state level, but contributes at the federal level, you can look at it that way. So those are two really, really great resources. I know there's another one. I would stick with those two. Connie, anyone else have anything to add?
No.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll just add really quickly, open records requests for funding streams for any CRT-related plans that your district wants to do. We asked for all of the grant applications that were going to fund the CCAP, and we got back just a bombshell document that showed that our administrators had applied for a grant called the Victims of Crime Act grant. And essentially they were going to take money away from more impoverished school districts that actually had violent crime and other agencies that were created to assist victims of violent crime, like human trafficking and robbery and assault and burglary and all of that. And they were going to apply to take those grant monies away to fund our CCAP in one of the richest school districts in Texas, which was just so fraught with so many different problems, but everyone in our community, from liberals to conservatives, was outraged when we found these documents that showed that one of our senior administrators not only was going to do that, but also was going to have some of those monies go to her husband as the new director of leadership for cultural competence in our district. So open records requests to follow the money are just really important to do, whether it's at the school board level or the city council level or whatever level you're dealing with.
Neither that person or her husband are currently employed by Carolina State, by the way. All right.
By the way, at the local level, all of those Texas ethics reports that you can give at the state level, you can give at the local level as well. County officials file them with the county clerk, and the city officials with the city secretary, and I assume with the district as well. So you can get those same reports to see all of their campaign revenues and all their campaign expenses.
So last two questions, not really related, but since it's legislative, we'll combine them. And then Fran has a few words, and then we'll let you out of here. Thank you again for being here. Y'all been fantastic. So, number one, can a group go to Austin at key times? When the liaison for the Senate says, hey, go down there, is it effective? That's the first question. Second question, it's very difficult to determine how senators and state reps vote on bills. How do we change that?
Absolutely, groups can go. You would call the office secretary, you call the scheduler in the Senate office and say, we have a group coming down, we'd love to take a picture, love to visit with the senator, and again, absolutely, they love that, we need to do that. And what was the second thing?
Is it effective when go down there on a thing, and then the second thing is how do you determine, or how do we make it easier to determine how state reps or senators vote?
Well, so there's what is it, Murphy? TLO, Texas Legislature Online, and you can track all the votes on your state senator and your House rep, or if you like, you can actually get push notifications. I don't know if it's on the particular votes
Yes,
for the reps. It is or is not?
The votes are not, but you can get push
On the
notifications.
on the bills,
On the
right?
bills.
So if you particularly want to watch, want to see things on criminal justice reform, you can have push notifications on bills that have to do with that. In other words, it comes to you. You don't have to sit there and search it. This bill has to do with this, and the vote took place, and you can see, as it goes through the process. But it's not. But our vote. How do you? Yeah, Murphy.
I'll add to that too. So to Connie's point about push notifications, so if you are looking for like a broad, maybe it's criminal justice, you can set up alerts for that. But if there's specific bills that you're tracking that you already know about once they're filed, you can set specific alerts for those, which is really important. And then, if you have a question for your state rep or state senator on an issue, or you were following bill and you're like, hey, how did you vote on this? That's something that the staff can give you. But if you're really savvy with Texas Legislature Online, and it's really not complicated. I'm sure we have resources that Fran's already put together that are super easy to navigate. But TLO is your friend.
Yeah,
that is something where that's the accountability factor for sure. Because not only, to Connie's point on the Senate, I never lived over in that land, but on the House Representative side, when amendments come up on bills, it's not just the bill, right? It goes through that process. But when a bill gets to the floor, the amendments are key as well. So votes can be taken on each amendment that's presented on the House floor or the Senate floor, which is really important. The House, because there's 150 people, a lot of stuff can fly under the radar, which is why it's so important to have those fighters that we've had for the last several sessions asking for record votes on everything. So if you want to see, maybe it was a Second Amendment bill, and there was an amendment thrown on that could have actually made the bill better, and there were reps who voted against it. As long as you have that record vote, that's your accountability measure. So TLO, ask somebody here how to use it. Ask Fran. I'd be happy to show you. I'm a firm believer in learning to navigate that.
Thank you very much to our panel. Y'all were fantastic. I hope y'all found this helpful. Always remember this. When you're looking at who to support running for office, are you more important or are they more important? And I can tell you, every one of these people up here, you're more important. There's lots of people that run for office that they're more important. Those are the ones to stay away from. So thank you for letting me share this microphone. Thank you guys very much. You're fantastic. Fran, you want to close us out?
Yes, and I want to just quickly add two things to what was said regarding the TLO. That was one of the things I wanted to tell you about. We teach that. That's another one of the training opportunities we have in our Citizen Advocate class. We have this Citizen Advocate program where we actually mobilize people to go and testify at hearings in Austin, or talk to legislators about a bill, or show up at a school board or a city council meeting. So that's another program that you can join if you want to, and again, that's through me. But yeah, one of the things in our Citizen Advocate, we have a whole segment on using the Texas Legislature online website. So I can show you how to look up those record votes on both amendments and bills. We've done 3 Citizen Advocate classes here in this facility this year, with over 100 people showing up at every single one. We also did one in Weiss County for a group there, and we did one for Parker County Conservatives, and we did one for our group out in Lubbock County. We will continue to do those throughout the year, even though the legislative session has ended, because you can apply that to any level of government. The next one is going to be in August down in Leander in Williamson County. I don't have an exact date on that yet because we're still working that all out, but you can watch the website for announcements about that. Secondly, about Follow the Money, another good source that I have found, because I hate using the Texas Ethics Commission. It's just overwhelming for me. I am not a detailed, statistical kind of person. It's called Transparency USA, and they have a division for every state. So there's a Transparency Texas, and they're just a little more user-friendly friendly, and they write actual articles, you know, and it's just easy to follow. So, thank you so much for coming. Some of us are going to lunch after this. We're going to go to Jason's Deli on MacArthur. It's just up the road here at 7707 MacArthur Boulevard. If you'd like to join us, you know, it's do your own thing, but we can chat and maybe ask some more questions and get to know each other, and I just thought it would be fun. So you're welcome to join us. I did not make reservations, so we're just going to bombard them with conservative action. Let's give another big hand for Tim. I've been sitting in the back listening, and the advice that these people are giving you is just awesome.
Yeah.
It is so right on. I hope you took good notes. So thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Bye.